Every morning, the sun barely peeked over the horizon when Lieutenant Jasmine Jazz Thompson stepped into her local gym. The air inside was always crisp, filled with the faint smell of sweat and cleaning supplies, mingling with the rhythmic hum of treadmills and the clinking of weights. For Jazz, this place wasn't just about staying fit. It was a sanctuary. A decorated Navy SEAL with years of grueling combat training behind her, Jazz valued discipline above all else. Her workouts weren't just routines. They were rituals that kept her sharp, grounded, and ready for whatever life threw at her. To most people in the gym, Jazz blended into the background. She didn't talk much, preferring to focus on her exercises without distractions. Her signature navy blue athletic gear made her easy to spot but never drew attention. There was something unassuming about her demeanor, almost like she didn't want anyone to notice her. But those who paid close attention might have noticed how effortlessly she moved, how every step, lift, or stretch seemed calculated, precise, as though choreographed by someone who had spent years perfecting their craft. And yet, no one guessed the truth. Beneath her calm exterior lay skills honed through some of the toughest military training on Earth. On this particular Tuesday, everything started normally. Jazz arrived at 6:00 a.m. sharp, just as she always did. She greeted the front desk staff with a polite nod before heading straight to her usual spot near the squat rack. As she stretched, loosening up her muscles, she couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversations around her. Someone nearby was talking about their weekend plans, while another person complained about work stress. It was all so ordinary, so predictable. Jazz liked it that way. Predictability gave her a sense of control, something she cherished after years of unpredictable missions overseas. But then something unusual caught her eye. A man walked in, a stranger whose presence immediately disrupted the peaceful atmosphere. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with an air of arrogance that clashed with the quiet energy of the early morning crowd. His name was Marcus Kane, though Jazz didn't know that yet. What she did notice was how he scanned the room, his gaze lingering on equipment as if claiming ownership. When he finally settled on a bench press station, he barked at a younger guy using it to move aside, despite there being plenty of other stations available. Marcus' behavior quickly became impossible to ignore. Within minutes, he'd monopolized 3 different machines, refusing to share even when others politely asked. His loud voice echoed off the walls as he criticized someone's form and laughed obnoxiously at another person's struggle. People exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to confront him or simply endure his antics until he left. Jazz tried to tune him out, focusing instead on her warm-up routine. But deep down, she felt a flicker of irritation. This wasn't the kind of environment she, or anyone, wanted to train in. As fate would have it, Marcus eventually turned his attention toward Jazz. Spotting her at the squat rack, he frowned, muttering under his breath about newbies taking up space. Unaware of what was coming next, Jazz continued her stretches, oblivious to the storm brewing just a few feet away. Little did she, or anyone else, know that this seemingly ordinary day was about to take a dramatic turn, one that would leave everyone questioning what they thought they knew about strength, courage, and humility. Marcus Kane wasn't the kind of person who blended into a crowd. Even in a room full of people focused on their workouts, his presence was impossible to ignore. He had an energy about him, loud, brash, and domineering, that seemed to fill every corner of the gym. By now, nearly everyone had noticed him, whether they wanted to or not. Some avoided eye contact, hoping he wouldn't single them out. Others whispered quietly among themselves, rolling their eyes at his behavior. But no matter what they did, Marcus didn't seem to care. In fact, it almost felt like he thrived on the attention. Jasmine Jazz Thompson, however, wasn't one to waste her time worrying about distractions. She continued with her routine, methodically moving from one exercise to the next. Her focus was razor-sharp, as if nothing could break her concentration. But even Jazz couldn't ignore Marcus forever. Eventually, their paths crossed, or rather, collided, when Marcus zeroed in on the squat rack she was using. "Hey, you," Marcus barked, pointing a finger at Jazz without so much as introducing himself. His tone was sharp, demanding, and laced with impatience. "I've been waiting for that rack. Get off." Jazz paused mid-rep, lowering the barbell back onto its stand before turning to face him. Her expression remained calm, but there was a flicker of surprise in her eyes. She wasn't used to being spoken to like this, especially by someone she'd never met. Still, she kept her voice steady as she replied, "I've been here for 10 minutes. If you'd like, we can take turns sharing." It was a reasonable suggestion, the kind of compromise most people would accept without hesitation. But Marcus wasn't interested in reason. To him, this was a matter of dominance. Chance to assert himself and show everyone in the gym who was in charge. Instead of agreeing, he scoffed loudly, shaking his head. "You don't get it, do you?" he sneered. "This isn't your rack. This is my gym now." The words hung in the air, heavy and dripping with arrogance. A few nearby gym-goers stopped what they were doing to watch the exchange unfold. They exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what might happen next. Would Jazz back down, or would she stand her ground? Without waiting for a response, Marcus stepped closer, invading her personal space. His towering frame loomed over her, an obvious attempt to intimidate. For a moment, Jazz simply looked up at him, her dark eyes meeting his with quiet resolve. Then, in a low, measured voice, she said, "If you want the rack, you can wait your turn like everyone else." Her calmness only seemed to infuriate Marcus further. He clenched his fists, his jaw tightening as he leaned in even closer. "You think you're tough, huh?" he spat, his voice rising. "Let me tell you something. This isn't some military boot camp. You're just another wannabe trying to act big." The comment stung, though Jazz didn't let it show. She knew better than to rise to the bait. Years of high-stakes training had taught her how to stay composed under pressure, no matter how heated things got. But Marcus wasn't done. Emboldened by her silence, he reached out and grabbed her arm, yanking her away from the squat rack. The sudden movement caught everyone off guard, including Jazz herself. For a split second, the entire gym froze. No one spoke, no one moved. All eyes were glued to the scene unfolding before them. Marcus stood there, smirking triumphantly, clearly convinced that he'd won. But what he didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that he had just crossed a line. And Jazz, despite her unassuming demeanor, was not someone to be underestimated. As Marcus released her arm and took a step back, Jazz straightened up, her posture shifting ever so slightly. There was a new intensity in her gaze, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what she would do next. Whatever it was clear that this confrontation was far from over. And Marcus had no idea what he was truly dealing with. The moment Marcus grabbed Jazz's arm, the atmosphere in the gym shifted. It was as if the air itself had grown heavier, charged with an unspoken tension that made everyone uneasy. Gym-goers who had been casually lifting weights or jogging on treadmills suddenly stopped, their attention snapping toward the unfolding scene. Some instinctively reached for their phones to record what might happen next, while others simply stared, frozen in place, unsure how to react. Jazz didn't flinch. Instead, she moved with a precision that seemed almost rehearsed, her actions smooth and deliberate. In one fluid motion, she twisted her arm free of Marcus's grip, using his own force against him. The move caught him off guard, sending him stumbling backward several steps. For a brief moment, Marcus looked shocked, his bravado faltering as he tried to regain his balance. But before he could fully recover, Jazz stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Without hesitation, she delivered a perfectly executed side kick to his chest. The sound of impact echoed through the otherwise silent room, followed by a collective gasp from the onlookers. Marcus stumbled back even further, crashing into a nearby weight bench with a loud thud. His face flushed red, not just from embarrassment, but also from the realization that he had severely underestimated the woman standing in front of him. For a few seconds, Marcus lay there, dazed and struggling to comprehend what had just happened. His mouth opened and closed as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. Around him, the gym erupted into murmurs. People exchanged wide-eyed glances, whispering excitedly about what they had just witnessed. A few even clapped quietly, though they quickly stopped when they realized the gravity of the situation. Jazz stood tall, her breathing steady and controlled. Her expression remained calm, almost serene, as if she hadn't just taken down a man twice her size with ease. She watched Marcus carefully, her body poised and ready in case he decided to retaliate. But despite his initial aggression, it was clear now that Marcus was shaken. He blinked rapidly, trying to process the fact that this petite woman had effortlessly dismantled his attempt at intimidation. Slowly, Marcus pushed himself up into a sitting position, wincing slightly as he rubbed his chest, where Jazz's kick had landed. His earlier arrogance was gone, replaced by uncertainty and confusion. For the first time since entering the gym, he seemed unsure of himself. The cocky smirk that had plastered his face moments ago was nowhere to be seen. As Marcus scrambled to his feet, still visibly rattled, Jazz took a step back, giving him space. She didn't need to say anything. Her actions spoke volumes. The message was clear. She wasn't someone to be trifled with. Yet, despite her display of skill, Jazz showed remarkable restraint. She didn't press the attack or escalate the situation further. Instead, she waited patiently, her eyes locked onto his, silently daring him to make another move. The silence in the gym was palpable, broken only by the faint hum of machines and the occasional murmur from the crowd. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see what Marcus would do next. Would he double down on his aggression, fueled by humiliation? Or would he retreat, realizing he had bitten off more than he could chew? Marcus hesitated, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. His pride battled with common sense, each second stretching longer than the last. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he muttered something under his breath, something too low for anyone to hear, and stormed out of the gym, shoving past equipment and nearly knocking over a water bottle rack in his haste to leave. As the door slammed shut behind him, the room exhaled collectively. People began talking animatedly, replaying the events in hushed tones. Some approached Jazz cautiously, offering praise and admiration for how she had handled the situation. Others simply watched from afar, marveling at the quiet strength she had displayed. But Jazz didn't linger to bask in the attention. After a brief pause to ensure Marcus wasn't coming back, she calmly returned to her workout as if nothing unusual had happened. To her, this was just another day, a reminder of the importance of staying grounded, disciplined, and prepared for whatever challenges life might throw her way. As Marcus stormed out of the gym, slamming the door behind him with a force that rattled the glass panes, the room erupted into a flurry of activity. People began talking all at once, their voices overlapping in a mix of shock, admiration, and disbelief. Some rushed to Jazz's side, eager to congratulate her or ask if she was okay. Others stayed back, whispering among themselves about what had just unfolded. Phones were held up, capturing shaky videos and photos as evidence of the extraordinary scene they had witnessed. Jazz, however, remained unfazed. She didn't join in the chatter or bask in the sudden spotlight. Instead, she calmly wiped her hands on a towel, took a sip from her water bottle, and turned to address the small group gathering around her. Her demeanor was calm but firm, commanding respect without demanding it. "Listen," she said, raising her voice just enough to be heard over the din. "I don't want anyone making this bigger than it needs to be." He crossed a line. "Yes, but I'm not here to escalate things unnecessarily." Her words quieted the crowd almost instantly. Everyone leaned in, hanging onto every syllable. It wasn't often you got to hear someone like Jazz speak, someone who carried herself with such authority yet humility. There was an unspoken understanding that whatever she said next would carry weight. "I'm a Navy SEAL," she continued, her tone matter-of-fact but not boastful. "My training has taught me how to handle situations like this, not because I enjoy confrontation, but because sometimes it's necessary. What happened today wasn't personal. It was about setting boundaries. And let me make one thing clear. Violence isn't the answer unless there's no other choice. Today, I gave him a chance to stop. But when he refused, I did what I had to do." The room fell silent again, save for the faint hum of machines still running in the background. No one dared interrupt her. Even those who hadn't been paying attention earlier were now fully invested in her words. For many, this revelation changed everything. The quiet, unassuming woman they'd seen day after day in the gym wasn't just another regular. She was a highly trained professional capable of handling herself in ways most people couldn't even imagine. But Jazz wasn't done yet. She scanned the faces around her, her gaze steady and thoughtful. "People need to understand something," she added, her voice softer but no less impactful. "Strength isn't about throwing your weight around or intimidating others. Real strength is knowing when to hold back. It's about control, not just over your body, but over your emotions. That's what keeps us safe, both physically and mentally." Her final statement lingered in the air, resonating deeply with everyone present. Some nodded in agreement, while others exchanged reflective glances. A few clapped quietly, though Jazz quickly raised a hand to signal them to stop. "Thank you," she said simply, "but please, let's move on. This doesn't define me, and it shouldn't define any of you either." With that, she returned to her workout as though nothing remarkable had occurred. The squat rack stood empty where Marcus had tried to assert dominance, but Jazz didn't hesitate to reclaim it. She adjusted the weights, stepped into position, and resumed her routine with the same focus and determination she'd shown before the altercation. To her, this was just part of life, a momentary disruption that didn't deserve to derail her day. Meanwhile, the rest of the gym buzzed with energy. Conversations shifted from shock to admiration, with many praising Jazz not only for her physical prowess, but also for her composure and wisdom. Someone joked half-heartedly about never skipping leg day again if Jazz was around, earning a round of nervous laughter. Another person remarked that they felt safer knowing she was a regular at the gym. Slowly but surely, the tension in the room dissolved, replaced by a shared sense of awe and gratitude. Outside, Marcus fumed as he paced near his car, replaying the incident in his mind. His chest still ached from the impact of Jazz's kick, but it was the blow to his ego that stung the most. Never in his wildest dreams had he imagined being bested so effortlessly, and by someone who looked so unassuming. As much as he wanted to dismiss it as a fluke, deep down, he knew better. Something inside him clicked, a realization that maybe, just maybe, he needed to rethink the way he approached people and situations. Back inside, Jazz finished her set and moved on to her next exercise, her movements fluid and deliberate. If anyone noticed the subtle change in her expression, a fleeting hint of satisfaction, it went unspoken. After all, for someone like Jazz, actions always spoke louder than words. And today, her actions had spoken volumes. By the time lunch rolled around, the story of what had happened at the gym had spread far beyond the walls of the small fitness center. Someone had posted a video online, just a shaky clip of Jazz delivering her perfectly executed sidekick and standing her ground with quiet confidence, and within hours it had gone viral. Social media platforms buzzed with reactions, memes, and hashtags like #JamHero and #NaveSealJustice. News outlets picked up the story, dubbing it the showdown that proved strength comes in all sizes. For most people, the video was equal parts thrilling and inspiring. Viewers marveled at Jazz's composure under pressure, her ability to diffuse a potentially dangerous situation without resorting to unnecessary aggression. Comment sections overflowed with praise for her restraint and skill. Many pointed out how Marcus's behavior served as a cautionary tale about underestimating others based on appearances. Some even joked that they'd think twice before cutting in line at their own gyms after seeing what happened here. But amidst all the noise and excitement, Jazz remained remarkably grounded. Back at her base, later that afternoon, she went about her duties as usual, barely acknowledging the whirlwind of attention surrounding her. When colleagues approached her during breaks, curious about the viral video, she shrugged it off with a wry smile. It was nothing, she told them casually. Just another Tuesday. Her teammates weren't convinced. They teased her good-naturedly, calling her the gym legend and asking if she planned to start teaching self-defense classes on the side. One of her closest friends, a fellow Navy SEAL named Ryan, playfully suggested she write a book titled How to Take Down Bullies Before Breakfast. Jazz laughed along with them, but quickly changed the subject, steering the conversation toward their upcoming training exercises instead. Despite her reluctance to engage with the hype, the story resonated deeply with people across the country. For many women, especially Black women, Jazz's actions were a powerful reminder of resilience and inner strength. Countless viewers shared personal stories of facing similar situations, times when they'd been underestimated or dismissed because of their gender or race, and expressed gratitude for seeing someone stand up so confidently. Parents used the incident as a teaching moment for their children, emphasizing the importance of respect, discipline, and standing up for oneself without resorting to anger. Meanwhile, local news stations scrambled to track down witnesses from the gym. Several members agreed to interviews, recounting the events with a mix of awe and admiration for Jazz. One woman described how she initially froze when Marcus grabbed Jazz's arm, only to feel a surge of relief and pride when Jazz handled the situation with such poise. Another man admitted he'd been too intimidated to intervene, but felt inspired by Jazz's example moving forward. As the day wore on, the narrative began to shift slightly. While much of the focus remained on Jazz's heroics, some commentators turned their attention to Marcus, dissecting his behavior and questioning why he thought aggression was an acceptable way to assert dominance. Opinion pieces popped up online, analyzing toxic masculinity and the dangers of unchecked entitlement. Others argued that Marcus's actions highlighted a broader cultural issue, the need for greater awareness and accountability in public spaces. Through it all, Jazz stayed focused on her responsibilities. She didn't watch the videos or read the articles. She didn't have time for distractions like that. To her, the incident was already in the past, a fleeting moment that didn't warrant dwelling on. What mattered more was the work ahead, mentoring young recruits, preparing for future missions, and continuing to lead by example both in and out of uniform. Still, there were moments when the weight of the attention caught her off guard. As she walked through the grocery store later that evening, a stranger stopped her to thank her for being such a positive role model. At first, Jazz wasn't sure what the person was talking about. She hadn't recognized herself in the viral video either, but when it clicked, she offered a polite nod and a soft, "You're welcome." The encounter lasted less than a minute, but it reminded her of the ripple effect one action could have. Even something as simple as standing your ground could inspire countless others to do the same. By the end of the day, the world seemed to have moved on to the next big headline. But for those who had witnessed the showdown firsthand or followed the story online, it was clear that the impact would linger. Jazz may have seen it as just another event in her life, but for everyone else, it was a lesson in courage, humility, and the true meaning of strength. And though she might never fully realize it, she had become a symbol of hope. The viral video of the gym showdown didn't just bring Jazz into the spotlight. It also turned Marcus Kane's life upside down. Within hours of the incident, his face was plastered across social media, accompanied by captions labeling him as the guy who picked the wrong fight. Comments flooded in, ranging from harsh criticism to outright ridicule. Some called him out for his aggression and arrogance, while others mocked his inability to back up his tough guy act. Memes began circulating online, with captions like, "When you mess with someone way out of your league," or "Never underestimate a Navy SEAL." At first, Marcus tried to brush it off. He deleted his social media accounts and avoided public spaces, hoping the storm would blow over quickly. But the backlash wasn't confined to the internet. Friends distanced themselves, uncomfortable being associated with him. Coworkers whispered behind his back, and even strangers recognized him when he ventured out for groceries or gas. The weight of public shame pressed down on him relentlessly, leaving him isolated and humiliated. For days, Marcus retreated into himself, shutting out the world as much as possible. He spent hours alone in his apartment, replaying the incident in his mind. Every time he thought about Jazz's calm demeanor and precise movements, he felt a mix of anger, embarrassment, and something deeper, a gnawing sense of inadequacy. Who was he, really? Why had he let his temper get the better of him? And why hadn't he seen this coming? It wasn't until a former coworker reached out that Marcus began to consider making a change. The message was simple. Hey, I know things are rough right now, but maybe this is a wake-up call. You've got potential, man. Don't waste it. Those words stuck with Marcus long after he closed his phone. For the first time since the incident, he allowed himself to think about what had gone wrong, and more importantly, how he could fix it. Determined to turn things around, Marcus took the first step toward redemption. He enrolled in anger management classes. At first, attending the sessions felt excruciating. Sitting in a room full of strangers, sharing stories of past mistakes, made him feel vulnerable in ways he wasn't used to. But as the weeks went by, he started to open up. He talked about his struggles with insecurity, admitting that his aggressive behavior often stemmed from a need to prove himself. Slowly, he began to understand that real strength wasn't about dominance. It was about self-control. In addition to the classes, Marcus started seeing a therapist who specialized in helping people work through deep-seated issues. Through their conversations, he uncovered layers of unresolved frustration and fear that had been driving his actions for years. His therapist encouraged him to practice mindfulness techniques, such as meditation and journaling, to better manage his emotions. Marcus resisted at first. He wasn't exactly the meditation type. But eventually, he found solace in the quiet moments of reflection. Writing down his thoughts helped him process his feelings instead of bottling them up. As months passed, Marcus noticed subtle changes in himself. He became more patient, more willing to listen rather than react impulsively. He practiced empathy, imagining how his words and actions might affect others before speaking or acting. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks along the way, but each small victory gave him hope that he was heading in the right direction. One day, while scrolling through articles about the gym incident, something he rarely did anymore, Marcus came across an interview with Jazz. In it, she spoke candidly about the importance of growth and second chances. "We all make mistakes," she said. "What matters is what we do afterward. Do we learn from them? Do we become better versions of ourselves? That's where true strength lies." Her words struck a chord deep within Marcus. Here was the woman who had dismantled his bravado in seconds, yet she was talking about forgiveness and personal growth. It was a reminder that no matter how far he'd fallen, there was always room to rise again. Inspired, Marcus decided it was time to confront the one person he owed the most, Jazz herself. He didn't expect her to forgive him, or even acknowledge him, but he knew he had to try. After all, if she could show such grace under pressure, surely he could muster the courage to take responsibility for his actions. With that thought in mind, Marcus returned to the gym where it all began, determined to face the music and start rebuilding not only his reputation, but also his character. Marcus stood outside the gym, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his jacket. The same glass doors he had stormed out of months ago now felt like an insurmountable barrier. His heart pounded in his chest as he replayed what he planned to say over and over in his mind. He knew there was no guarantee Jazz would even agree to speak with him, let alone forgive him. But he also knew he couldn't move forward without trying. Taking a deep breath, Marcus pushed open the door and stepped inside. The familiar sense of sweat and cleaning supplies hit him immediately, but this time they carried a different weight, a reminder of how much had changed since that fateful day. He scanned the room nervously, half expecting everyone to glare at him or whisper behind his back. To his relief, most people were too focused on their workouts to pay him any attention. Still, the knot in his stomach tightened as he spotted Jazz near the squat rack, the very spot where their confrontation had unfolded. She was mid-lift, her movements fluid and controlled, just as he remembered. For a moment, Marcus hesitated, unsure if he should interrupt her workout. But then she lowered the barbell onto its stand and turned to grab her water bottle. Seizing the opportunity, Marcus approached cautiously, his footsteps slow and deliberate. Hey," he began awkwardly, his voice barely above a whisper. When Jazz looked up, her expression remained neutral, not hostile, but not exactly welcoming either. Encouraged by her lack of immediate dismissal, Marcus continued, I'm Marcus. From before, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." The words tumbled out clumsily, but they carried genuine sincerity. Marcus shifted uncomfortably under her steady gaze, bracing himself for rejection. Instead, Jazz studied him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face, as though trying to gauge whether his apology was heartfelt or simply performative. Finally, she nodded slightly. "Okay," she said simply, her tone measured but not unkind. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was enough to give Marcus the courage to keep going. "I know I messed up big time," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I acted like an idiot, and I didn't think about how my behavior affected anyone else. I underestimated you, and honestly, I underestimated myself. What happened here? It woke me up. I realized I needed to make some serious changes." Jazz listened silently, her expression softening ever so slightly. When Marcus paused, she asked, "What kind of changes?" Marcus hesitated, then explained everything he'd done since that day. The anger management classes, the therapy sessions, the effort to be more mindful of his actions. "It's been hard," he admitted, "but I'm learning. I want to be better, for myself, and for the people around me." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of treadmills and the clang of weights filled the silence between them. Then Jazz exhaled slowly, almost imperceptibly. "Change isn't easy," she said finally, "but it's worth it. And I can see you're trying. That counts for something." Her words caught Marcus off guard. He hadn't expected compassion from her, not after everything he'd put her through. Gratitude swelled in his chest, mingled with a renewed sense of determination. "Thank you," he said earnestly, "for saying that, and for showing me that day what real strength looks like." Jazz gave him a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Strength isn't about being perfect. It's about owning your mistakes and doing the work to grow. You've taken the first step. Keep going." With that, she picked up her towel and headed toward the stretching mats, leaving Marcus standing there, feeling lighter than he had in months. Though their conversation had been brief, it marked the beginning of an unexpected connection, one built not on shared interests or mutual admiration, but on growth, accountability, and respect. Over the following weeks, Marcus returned to the gym regularly, always careful to follow the rules and treat others with kindness. Occasionally, he and Jazz exchanged polite nods or short conversations about progress and perseverance. Their bond remained quiet and understated, yet meaningful all the same. Both of them understood that true transformation took time. And sometimes, the most powerful lessons came from the most unlikely places. Years passed, and the memory of the gym showdown faded from headlines, but its impact lingered in ways that no one could have predicted. For Jasmine "Jazz" Thompson, life continued much as it always had, disciplined, purposeful, and grounded. She remained a fixture at the gym, her quiet strength inspiring those around her without her ever intending to. Her story, however, took on a life of its own. It became a symbol of resilience, courage, and the importance of standing up for oneself, not with anger or aggression, but with grace and control. Jazz used her newfound platform wisely. Though she never sought fame or recognition, She recognized an opportunity to make a difference. She began mentoring young women entering the military, sharing not only her combat skills, but also the lessons she'd learned about leadership, humility, and inner strength. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," she often told them. "Your worth isn't defined by how others see you. It's defined by how you carry yourself." Her words resonated deeply, especially among women who faced challenges in male-dominated fields. Many credited her guidance with helping them navigate their own struggles, both personal and professional. For Marcus Kane, the journey was longer and more arduous, but equally transformative. The man who once thrived on intimidation and dominance had become almost unrecognizable. Through months of therapy, self-reflection, and hard work, he had shed layers of bitterness and insecurity, replacing them with patience, empathy, and a desire to give back. He started volunteering at community centers, teaching conflict resolution workshops, and speaking openly about his past mistakes. His honesty struck a chord with audiences, many of whom saw themselves in his story. "I'm not proud of who I was," he admitted during one talk, "but I am proud of who I'm becoming. And that's something we can all strive for." Though their paths rarely crossed anymore, Jazz and Marcus maintained a quiet respect for each other. Occasionally, they exchanged updates when they bumped into each other at the gym. Marcus would thank her again for setting him straight, while Jazz would nod approvingly, acknowledging the progress he'd made. Their relationship wasn't built on friendship in the traditional sense, but rather on mutual growth, a shared understanding that everyone has the capacity to change if they're willing to put in the effort. The legacy of that day extended far beyond the two individuals involved. Countless people drew inspiration from their stories, using them as motivation to confront their own fears, insecurities, and shortcomings. Social media posts celebrating Jazz's composure and Marcus's redemption popped up regularly, reminding people that real strength comes in many forms. Teachers incorporated the incident into lessons about conflict resolution, emphasizing the importance of de-escalation and accountability. Even fitness influencers referenced the showdown, encouraging their followers to approach challenges with discipline and respect. At the gym where it all began, things returned to normal, but with a subtle shift. Members treated one another with greater kindness and consideration, perhaps subconsciously influenced by the events of that unforgettable morning. The staff hung a small plaque near the squat rack that read, "Strength is not just physical, it's mental, emotional, and moral too." No one mentioned it outright, but everyone knew what, or rather, who, it was referring to. As time went on, Jazz and Marcus both came to realize that their lives had been forever intertwined by that single moment. What had started as a clash of egos had evolved into a testament to human potential, the ability to rise above adversity, learn from failure, and embrace change. They may have walked away from the gym that day as two very different people, but they shared a common bond, a belief in the power of transformation, not just for themselves, but for everyone willing to take the first step. And so, the story of the gym showdown lived on, not as a tale of conflict, but as a reminder of hope. It proved that even in moments of tension and misunderstanding, there lies an opportunity for growth, connection, and healing. In a world often divided by fear and judgment, it offered a simple yet profound truth. True strength is found not in overpowering others, but in lifting them up, even when they least expect it.